Take a nice relaxing breath and open the eyes. Okay, so we're going to talk about something called Agni, which is your digestive capacity. And we'll talk about that in a more expanded way. And we said there we were going to talk about the microbiome. Have you all heard of this word, microbiome? Yeah. So it's about the bacterium and the various organisms that are present in your digestive tract. Would you agree? Does that sound like a reasonable definition? Okay, good. And so that is something that we need to take care of. We've pretty much been taught to ignore that until more recently. But taking care of the microbiome is there's an expansion of how that can be done, right? Because the biggest approach today would be to take some supplements, right? Yeah. And the thing is that if you're taking supplements for something, for the microbiome or anything else, then don't you wonder why? Why is that happening? And so what we're going to talk about today is what is the cause of that, how to eliminate the cause, and how to allow your body to do what it knows how to do, and give it the support that it needs to do that. Sound good? Yeah. Okay, so how many people are not familiar with Ayurveda? Don't be shy. Yeah. Okay, so we talked just a little bit about just bring in some of the basics to establish this, right? So Ayurveda being the science of living or the science of life, and it was given with yoga from the Vedas long time ago, and it gives us principles to work with, so that we can take what we're experiencing in life, and if we keep these principles in mind, then we have the opportunity to have this body-mind experience be optimal. Yeah? And each of us then has a unique constitution. That's why we look different. That's why we have different preferences and so forth. And so with this science of living, then it's a complete science. Just so you have that perspective, it's a complete science. When Ayurveda has been around for thousands of years, it includes surgery and all the things that we might think of as medicine, or how do we take care of ourselves. So then Ayurveda then looks at us as part of nature. We are part of nature. And those of us who lived in the 20th century, we were trained to think that we were here to overcome nature. But what I'm going to be talking about is to come back into alignment with nature. So nature is made up of the 5 elements, these 5 elements of earth, water, fire, air, and space. And I remember the first time I ever heard that, it just went in one ear and out the other. But we're going to be talking about this because we're made up of it, right? Our body, there's the physical mass, that's the earth element, and we have a lot of water in us, yeah? And we have fire, the fire of transformation, the fire that we use to digest, the fire that we use to heal when we damage the body, and then we have air. We breathe, and then we have gas sometimes, yeah. And then there's space. Then the space is what defines the physical mass. There has to be some space. There's plenty of space up here, actually. Okay, so we have these 5 elements in us, and at the time of our conception, there is a unique combination and amounts of these elements. And that's what makes us look different and have different preferences and different strengths and weaknesses and so forth. So if I sound like I'm shaking, I'm not nervous. I'm actually quite cold. But I'm getting there. I'm going to use this. Thank you. Well, yeah. Yeah. No, it's okay. Thanks. I live in Bali, and I've lived in the tropics for for 25 years, so this is really an experience. So, so where were we? Yes. So we have these elements in us at our conception, and then and that is our ideal place, we'll say. And from there, all of life is happening, right? From conception, whatever's happening to mom happens to us, and then we come out and life is happening. And each of us has our own experiences and our own responses to those. But Ayurveda offers us then these principles that if we understand the principles, then we can find the very best ways to respond to what we're experiencing in life. And so we have those 5 elements. We talk about them as 3 doshas. Doshas are just a descriptor. It's just a way of looking at how the elements function in us. Right? So in other words, what's the earth element doing? What's the water element doing? So we have Vata dosha, which is air and space. We have Pitta dosha, which is fire and water. And we have earth, Kapha dosha, the earth element, with earth element and water element. And so they're all working inside of us. And we have times of day where those things are working within us. We can talk some more about that. So then there's this one other component that's also very important, which is called our Agni. And our Agni is our digestive capacity, as I said. And so it's our capacity to digest food and life. Both of those working together and being very important. There's plenty of space here. So this digestive capacity then works alongside the elements, the doshas in us, and particularly it's close with Vata dosha. Okay, so a couple of other principles, and then we'll start talking about what happens. And those principles are that like qualities attract like qualities, and the opposite qualities bring balance, right? And that's how nature works. That makes sense? Yeah, so I always like to use the example, when you're cold, you have a chilly day, and you go inside and you want to eat warm cooked foods. Well, then things are probably pretty balanced. In other words, your choices, your judgments are going to be wise for bringing balance to your system. But if you come inside and you say, "Oh, I know raw food has more nutrition, yeah, and so I'm going to eat raw food," even though it doesn't make any sense when the weather is cold, then that's going to cause imbalance, right? Because it's like qualities attract like qualities. And the other thing that happens is when you have an excess of any of these qualities, then you will crave more of it. And therefore it is taking you more out of balance. Does that make sense? A little bit? Yeah. Okay, so if I have a preference for something, that's very different than if I have a craving for something. Yeah, do you know the difference? The difference is, oh yeah, I'd like to have something, some fruit. Yeah, a little bit of sour fruit. Yeah, or I'm like this, going after it. Yeah. Okay, so there's one other thing, and that is this notion of cause and effect. Right. So, in other words, what I do, everything we do, what I think in life, my actions, there's always a consequence. Now, whether that consequence is positive or negative, well, depends on what it was. And it depends on how we judge it as well. But if there's an action, yeah, then there's a result that comes from that. Fair enough? Okay. All right, now let's talk about Agni. So Agni is at the cellular level, is your capacity to digest. That means your ability to digest. Let's talk about food first. That's the easiest part. Yeah? And so if I eat something and I have the experience of gas afterwards, or what else? If I have cramping, or if I have heartburn afterwards, Would you say that your body is telling you that it's not working? Right, right. So there's a cause. That food didn't work. Now, it doesn't mean there's a problem with the food necessarily. It means maybe there is, and maybe it's my capacity to digest it. Right? So if we talk about extremes, we're talking about a lot of chilies, garlic, onions, things that have a large amount of any of the tastes. By the way, we have some. Yeah.
Yes, doc.
Sure. That's fine. Thank you. Yeah, for sure. I mean, whatever you want to do. I'll have to say it's my first time having two microphones ever. Okay, but thank you so much for this. My feet are warming up. So let's see, where were we? Okay, so it's an interesting thing with Ayurveda, because Ayurveda it's us, and it's a holistic thing. It's a dynamic system, all operating together. And so the funny thing is where do you start? So that's why I like to start with the elements, and actually even beyond the elements, though, we can look at the qualities and things. But let me mention the 6 tastes. So the 6 tastes then are made up of the elements, right? So these 6 tastes then, sweet, salty, sour, bitter, pungent, and astringent, they all have effects on us, right? Cause and effect. And so the combination then of those tastes is what will either bring imbalance or balance. Makes sense? And if I have a taste that I crave, that I love, and I like to have lots of it, there's imbalance present. Okay? Yeah, because when the Agni is working and the system is balanced, I can eat a meal with all 6 tastes, but not equal amounts of the 6 tastes. And that meal, I will feel satisfied, and I won't want more food, and I won't crave anything. I won't crave sweet after the meal. I'll feel satisfied, and I will feel relaxed and energized. Not energized, but energized, just, I feel good, and relaxed at the same time. So that's the possible experience after eating a meal. So if I feel hyper, or if I feel groggy, or like I want to go to sleep, these are all indications that Agni, your digestive capacity, is not able to do its job. Okay? So this Agni then in us, remember I mentioned about we each have a unique constitution. So some of us are born with a stronger Agni than others. But we can have it work very well, all of us. But that's why some people can eat junk and eat poor combinations of food and get away with it longer than others, right? Any of you ever had digestive problems? Yeah. How many of you had digestive problems from childhood even? Yeah, not too many, a few. Yeah. So some of us do. I did. And so that is associated a little bit with the Constitution. And so that's why you could look around and say, how come they can do that and I can't? That's why. But believe me, what we do accumulates. So if we're doing things that are positive and work well, it accumulates. And if we're doing things that are not working, it accumulates. And so you might get sick when you're 30 and somebody else won't get sick till they're 50. But it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Yeah. I had one student who, she absolutely insisted on continuing to drink Diet Coke. And so it took until she was in 70. And then she had the problems. So then it's a matter of how do you want to live? Okay, so back to Agni. So our ability to digest then, is based on many things. It's based on my mental state. It's based on the food that you're putting in there, the quality of it, the combinations. And so in terms of the combinations, if we start to understand those 6 tastes and the effect that they have, then we can it's very easy to put meals together. So some of this might sound a little bit complicated as I go into it, but it's actually not. It's actually much simpler than what most of us have done. Okay, because we're just going to work with the qualities of it. In other words, how does it affect me? Does it make me feel hot? Does it make me feel cold? Things like that. And then what happens when you put them together? Okay. So the microbiome then, why do we need to worry about the microbiome? Our body knows how to take care of it. It's just us, our actions, we don't know how to take care of it. So if I'm putting a balance of those 6 tastes into me, just from a food standpoint, then, and I actually chew the food and actually give myself an opportunity to eat it at a reasonable pace with even a little bit of reverence, then I have a pretty good opportunity to digest that. But if I'm not chewing the food, I'm wolfing it down, I'm walking around while I'm eating, I'm looking at the computer or my phone or something else while I'm eating, I'm not going to digest it well. Yeah. Because my attention is split. Think about this. Where you put your attention is where your energy is going. Agni is, you could call it the energy generator. It needs to be fed properly. It needs to be given resources to use to be able to transform things. And here's one of the very important points of this, and that is, it's not just about, does my tummy feel okay after I eat? It has to do with Agni is the main component of what we call in Ayurveda our ojas. And what ojas is it's my immunity and my blissfulness. Yeah. And so this Agni then feeds that ojas. So you can think of ojas something like a savings account. Yeah. You put into the savings account, you have some savings. And you can take out every now and then, right? But if I'm not putting in very much and I'm taking out because I'm overactive and I'm not digesting my food well, so I'm not putting in and I'm taking out on a regular basis or even excessively, what happens? You get depleted. Yeah, and that's why we have things like chronic fatigue and adrenal failure and all kinds of illnesses today that people experience. Right? Okay. So we're back to Agni again. So when I chew the food, it goes in. When I chew it, it goes into my stomach and then it goes into the intestines, and this is the main area where Agni is active. But there is Agni in all the cells of the body. But this is the main area, right? So the stomach, the small intestines in particular, and a little bit into the colon. And so those are the areas that we see as problematic. But what I want to say to you is that your body has the ability to have a proper microbiome if we stop insulting it, if we stop insulting Agni, if we stop doing the things that are causing the disturbance in the first place. That makes sense? Yeah. So what are the things that we do that cause that disturbance? Well, not chewing your food is a big one. One of the things that your Agni in your body really like is that you have food, you have a meal, and it takes 4 to 6 hours. 6 hours for a full meal, let's say, to fully digest. I think even modern science would agree with that. And the thing is that if you put more undigested food on top of partially digested food, then you have disturbance. You're going to have indigestion. You're going to have what we call a jirna. And that disturbance then, if you do that every single time, let's say you're snacking every day, then you have a constant state of disturbance. And then your Agni is not going to work very well. Nothing's going to work well. You're going to get poor quality body tissue. Then you're going to have an accumulation then of toxins that are created. And so there's a name for these toxins that are created from undigested food. It's called Am. And when that Am, then your body has to do something with it. And some of it we might eliminate, but then there starts to be too much because we're doing this on a regular basis. And then it starts to go into the deeper tissues of the body. And then your body gets stiff. You know, we have teenagers now that are stiff.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying snacking is the only thing. There's a whole bunch of other things that we do, but that is one big one that's a really easy thing to change, and it'll make a difference in how you feel and how you digest. So we have
That.
our Agni then is what gives us the light in our eyes. It has us be able to be enthusiastic about life. It affects pretty much everything that we do in life. So if you can relax easily and smile easily, then, right? Because you can't do that if you have a stomach ache, right? Yeah, and you can't do that if you feel constipated. And you can't do that if you have a lot of other difficulties related to your digestion, right? So taking care of Agni then is what I want to talk about now. So Agni then has different conditions, and maybe you've experienced some of this. So your Agni then, it can be working really well. It's well balanced, and you would experience having food. Like I said, you know, you would eat the food, you would enjoy it. Afterwards, you would feel relaxed but energized, and be able to go about your day. You don't have to ever think about, you know, your weight. You know, am I eating enough? Am I not eating enough? And that, because you know inherently how much to eat.
Yeah.
So with that, then, we need to be able to have that clarity of mind to make those choices, right? And that comes when Agni is working well. So what are some of the other things then that interfere with Agni's function? And so not chewing the food, snacking, having cold food and cold drinks. Yeah, this one is something I know it's really difficult for people, and this is the part that so everybody starts frowning at me, you know. But cold food and cold drinks, especially around your eating, is going to inhibit the digestion. And one piece of that that's quite obvious is that, you know, when you put cold in there, the bile that your gallbladder is supposed to give out in order to have digestion take place fully, it gets too thick. It gets and if it's sludgy already because you haven't been digesting well, then that's not going to happen properly. And now you're going to have constipation and other types of problems. And cold food and cold drinks is one of the main causes of that. So you just need to have them body temperature a little warmer. Yeah, and that's going to make a big, big difference. So if that's something that you do, you might just try it. You might try doing something different. So when that happens, though, when you're in that kind of condition, so there are things that happen to Agni because of what we're doing. And so there are conditions of Agni. Well, one of them is the balanced condition, and the next one is something called Mand Agni, where the digestion is kind of slow, where you eat and it just feels like it just sits there and not much is happening. Anybody ever had that? Yeah. Okay. So that's Mand Agni, and it's slow. And so there's very simple things that you can do to help that along. And then we can sort out what it is you're doing that's causing that in the first place. But when that does happen, having a little ginger tea before your meals, good a half hour to an hour before your meals will be very helpful. There's something called a ginger appetizer. You can take a little small slice of ginger and put a couple of drops of lime or lemon on it and a sprinkle of salt, and chew that before the meal, and that'll help to stimulate the Agni. That's one of the great things about the cooler weather, though, because Agni can tend to be a little stronger in the cooler weather. And that's why we have some tendency to want to eat a little bit more, eat a little bit heavier foods, because Agni is actually stronger. Think of it like a campfire. When it's stronger, then we're able to actually process that food. And when you have hot weather, it's actually, the Agni goes down, right? Because it's trying to keep your body cool. You see, all of it is operating from the standpoint of, how am I going to take care of this body? Yeah, that's what it naturally does. So what I'm talking about today is to bring ourselves into alignment with that ability to function that way. So this Manda Agni then, there's people who have more kapha in their constitution will tend toward it, but any of us can experience Manda Agni. And it's just a condition. It's not permanent. And that's another important thing. If you look at yourself and say, I always have heartburn, or I always have slow digestion. Well, you will continue to have it if you have that mental view of it. But if you start to allow yourself to see that, maybe I could change what I'm doing, and the body is going to respond differently. And then there's some folks who have a overly strong Agni, and it's called Tikshna Agni. Yeah? And Tikshna Agni then is hot. This is someone who eats a meal, and an hour later, you could eat a whole nother meal. Anybody had that? Yeah, had that before, yeah. Not a good idea, though. So that's another condition, and often it's caused by things. Some of it is related to the constitution. These are people who tend to have more pitta in the constitution, but any of us could experience it. If I eat a lot of hot, spicy foods and things like that, then that is a possibility. And then the third condition is something called Vishma Agni. And Vishma Agni is irregular, and meaning I can eat a whole lot because I am really hungry, and then I could forget to eat. Yeah, I could go, I could have one meal a day, no problem. Or I could actually forget to eat. Any of you ever had that? Yeah. So Vishma Agni then is not something that you want to cultivate, because Vishma Agni is, if you think about this now, maybe you overeat some and then you don't eat at all. And think about this Agni that is the campfire. So you can give it a little wood and give it a little air and feed it, and it goes and it grows. And if I throw sand on it, it smolders. And so that smoldering is when I'm creating toxins. And so if I eat a whole bunch and I overload it, it will start to smolder. If I don't eat at all, I'm not feeding it, it smolders. And when it's smoldering, I make toxins. And when I'm making toxins, I'm breeding disease. So Vishma Agni is something that you really want to pay attention to moving away from and balancing things out, because that is what creates most diseases these days. Okay. So we've got those conditions, 3 conditions that are out of balance, and the balanced Agni. And so how do I best take care of it? Very simply, 3 meals in the day. Paying attention to how much I'm eating in that meal, because when Agni's doing fairly well and the doshas are in pretty good balance, you're going to eat a fairly consistent amount. Other than when the weather changes, it might adjust just a little bit, but I'm talking about 5 to 10%. I'm not talking about 50%. So again, because if you eat a lot and then don't eat much, and you're doing this, your body doesn't like it. Agni doesn't like it. It gets insulted. And remember, when Agni isn't working well, then I'm not building ojas. And that's my vitality, my immunity. And that's why Some of us can be around a whole bunch of people that are sick and not get sick, and then other people will. Right? It has to do with how much ojas I have.
Yeah.
So that's the part about the food part. Now there's a whole nother part we're going to talk about. I'll go ahead and talk about that first. Yeah, questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Suppose we don't like it. This posting sort of is that related to this business?
So the question is about fasting. Yeah. So the thing is that if you have 3 meals in the day and you eat at regular times, by the way, consistency, body really likes that. The mind actually likes it too. Gives you lots of freedom. So consistency makes a big difference. So if I eat my dinner 5, 6 o'clock, let's say, I'm here 6 o'clock for you guys, right? Could you bring it that early again? Yeah. So if you eat at 6 o'clock and then let's say you have breakfast at 7:30, 8 o'clock. Yeah. So you have a fast every day. Yeah. So eating at night, one of the most deadly things for Agni and for the accumulation. Remember, so I can do good, positive things and it accumulates, and I can do not so good things and it accumulates. That's that cause and effect. But it does accumulate. If I have a regular pranayama practice and I do that for years and I'm allowing it to progress perhaps, I'm going to get the benefit of that. I'm one of those people, by the way. Yeah, because I wasn't in great shape at all when I started doing all this. But I was told that those consistent practices, even they don't have to be real long, but that it would accumulate and then it would benefit your later years in life. Yeah.
That's me. And I'm fasting 1.5 days a week. Okay, or
Okay, so fasting, so we have that daily fast where, right, from dinner to breakfast. The thing is, if you don't have that, then you eat somewhere in there, big insult to Agni. Does accumulate. Yeah. And so then fasting 1 day a week, I did that for a little over 10 years. And I can tell you that, and I did it for spiritual reasons and that. And the thing is that if you're conducting life where you're out and about, you're talking, you're working, you're doing those kinds of things, it's not a great idea. Yeah. Yeah, because eventually you'll start to experience some Vishma Agni. Yeah, where the Agni starts getting weaker and you start to get a little accumulation and then you eat meals and it doesn't feel that great. And I loved fasting. Oof. I was one of those, I could forget to eat. You want to eat today? No, let's just wait until tomorrow. No problem. Yeah, that's not a good thing. Yeah. Pardon?
it's all
Yeah, I understand. And again, you might have a holiday or you might have something where you do that. So here's one of the most important things to hear today, and that is that pay attention to how you feel. And don't just try to fix how you feel. Take a step back and say, okay, what have I done that's led up to this? Because you need to become your own scientist, because somebody else being responsible for this body, it doesn't work very well. It's yours. And you're the one that knows what's going on inside. Yeah. And so it's a matter of learning to trust ourselves. So, yeah, if you tend to overeat after a day of fasting, this is not a good thing. And perhaps, there's some other ways, to accomplish what you'd like to accomplish doing that. Yeah. So one of the reasons that we like to fast is because we have digestive disturbance going on, and it feels so good to feel light. Yeah. Okay.
just imagine interesting because I don't know the posters of mental health. I started fasting and like that's right close to me. But probably some vaccine names. Well, that's all. It's just at least I'm passing.
So the question was about eating late. I wouldn't do it. I really wouldn't. I mean, it's going to accumulate. And you always have to look at, how do I feel the next morning? Kind of heavy, not great, little bit groggy.
treatment 67, so the don't talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like the child, she's finished that must take
Yeah.
meal. In the spooky. That's 5 of right that it's only the wisdom on how it gets that patient.
Right. Did you hear that? She was describing how, and it is difficult for people who long shifts, 12-hour shifts, and so you come home, you eat a meal, and so forth, and that eating a meal and going to bed and making it to 67 and then starting to have difficulty with it, yeah, it accumulates. So it's about choices. And so my goal today is to have you understand better some of your choices, and you can learn a whole lot more about it, and it becomes a lot more fun. Ayurveda is actually really fun because you get to see how nature works and how all this is working, and you see how our way of thinking about it and the way we've treated it is kind of ridiculous because it's so incredibly powerful. And so that's what Ayurveda is for, is to empower us to take care of ourselves. And yes, sometimes we need some help from somebody else, but it's our responsibility. It's not to be turned over to somebody else or some organization or so forth. So yes, that accumulation does happen. Yeah.
And watching and bottom.
Can you stand up and I can speak? I'm sorry.
Roll so that roll section is another 7,000 rolls with that. So that you might be on and say
to eat raw fish? Oh, raw food. Okay. Raw fish, raw food. Same thing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The problem is the reason human beings started cooking food about 6,000 years ago or so is so that they could digest it. And the thing is that some of these folks who have the stronger digestion I mentioned and will tend toward Tikshna Agni, they're going to get away with it a lot longer than someone who has more of a Vata constitution is going to have a little bit weaker Agni. So raw food then, the reason for raw food that I understand is sure, you go out to the garden, you pick it, and it's going to it has the most prana, and which has the most nutrients. The only problem is it's not accessible to most of us. So there are those folks who will get away with it, although the people who started the raw food movement are finding that they didn't get away with it that well and are starting to do some other things. So, and I have to tell you that when the raw food movement came up, and I'd already been practicing many years in Ayurveda, my business went up like that. It was really pronounced. So, that it's not to make anything right or wrong. It's a matter of taking a look at, can I digest it? And if you start to have any kind of digestive problems, meaning any gas, bloating, heartburn, constipation, diarrhea, any of those kinds of things, those are all the first stage of disease. We look at disease in 6 stages in Ayurveda. And so those are first stage, easy to correct. When the body is strong, it'll correct itself in 24 hours, just in a cycle. But then what happens, then it starts hanging around and that. So then it doesn't matter how much nutrient the food have if you can't digest it and have it be accessible to you.
Can you tell us a little bit about leftovers?
Yes. So one of the things, we're talking about how you go out to the garden and you pick that food. It has prana. It has life force in it. You can feel it. All right. You can feel it with your hand. You can feel the energy of it. And when we cook it, have you noticed how vegetables and that when you cook it, there's that color change, right? That's when the prana wakes up. It's accessible right then. And that's why you want to have freshly cooked food. And so then the longer you go away from that cooking, the prana is going down. Yeah. So, when I started teaching and talking to people about Ayurveda, I'd say, okay, you got 24 hours. Just to get people to not eat food that's 3 days old, and then started working my way back.
Because at 24 hours, it's not great to kind of put in the fridge.
No, I wouldn't do 24 hours. I don't do that anymore. Yeah, because we're all a little bit more aware now, and so the reality of it is you need to eat it in 4 hours. And sometimes people will say, well, I have to cook my food and take it with me to work for the day. So put it in a thermos, keep it hot, and have it later in the day. No, keep it within the day, for sure.
But I think that sounds so basically menopause. Have you know the difference between when it's gas or bloating for menopause or it's those very fancy?
Because there is no gas. Thank you for the question. Did everybody hear that? Okay, so she wanted to know if gas and bloating is a result of menopause or is it because of digestive problems? And the answer is it's both. It's not, menopause doesn't menopause doesn't have all the symptoms that we call menopause. It's ridiculous. And it's because there's imbalance. It's because your doshas are imbalanced and your agni is imbalanced. Hot flashes are because of pitta imbalance in you. You calm them down, you calm the pitta and they go away. So why does it seem like it's happening when we go into menopause? And that's because we're going through a transition. There's a change happening. And so any imbalances are going to be amplified and you'll see them. Yeah.
I was able to treat that.
Absolutely.
This is digestion.
Absolutely. Do it all the time. Yeah. Yeah. The same with menstrual difficulties.
It has.
Oh, yeah. So she was saying, so you're saying you can take care of these problems with menopause naturally, and absolutely 100%, absolutely, we do it all the time. Any kind of menstrual difficulties, bear with us, fellas, okay? But it will make a difference in your life too, actually. All of the menstrual difficulties, they don't have to be there. By the way, in my lifetime, they weren't there. It was actually when I moved into puberty, and that was when it started, and it was related very much to how we were eating and exposure to pesticides and chemicals.
Question, and so the whole imbalance that was that as we get home, you very estrogen regular, the lower than cells on that, nothing till the mood.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It should not even be happening. So what I was about to say is that my mother, and I have two older sisters that are quite a bit older than me, when I started to have cramps, they couldn't figure out what was going on with me. What do you mean you have cramps? And things like that. No, it didn't used to exist. It exists because of imbalance in the system, and we're responsible for that system. It has everything to do with how you're eating, how you're sleeping, how you're conducting your life. And I could tell you all the things that I understand now that I was doing as a kid that started creating that imbalance. But I went through menopause without anything. And I have many, many clients who do that. And I'm not just trying to sell you something here. I'm just trying to save you from some headache and difficulty. Yeah. And actually, that's what all of this is. I had significant difficulty with my digestion as a child, but I only had one cold the entire time I was growing up. I didn't have that kind of thing. Now, I also, we didn't have vaccinations and all that kind of stuff back then, so there was a lot of things that I wasn't exposed to that make a difference. But so, the things that we believe today, that's why we started out kind of saying, okay, can I let go of some of the old ways of thinking and find some new ways of looking at this? And so you could say that we're looking at it then from the inside out. The foods that we have identified that are all such big problems these days, right? Where I live, there are restaurants all over the place with big signs and say gluten-free available and that kind of thing. And the thing is, the gluten's not the problem. The problem is our digestion. The reason we like wheat and things like that is because they're sweet and heavy, and we need that for our bodies. But when we can't digest it, because we don't chew it, and because maybe it's poor quality and that kind of thing. But when that's happening, well, of course, yeah, you're going to have digestive problems. And if you take that away, because it's one of the heavier things to digest, it's going to seem like that's the problem, but that's not the problem. Because you might notice then you start to have problems elsewhere. And then what also happens is that the diet becomes quite imbalanced, which is something that has happened these days. And so whole grains and grains have gotten a bad name now, right? Human beings have eaten grains for thousands of years. Most of the people on this planet live on it every day, including myself. But you have to chew it. And we stopped chewing, late 1970s. You see what I mean? So it's pretty simple. And the thing is that our egos can get a little bumped by this. What do you mean that it's that simple? It is that simple. And the thing is, you'll watch, and this is the next part I want to talk about, is that your mind will fight it. You'll say, well, maybe she knew what she was talking about, but I'm different. Yeah? Or I can't keep myself from it. And, okay.
So just speaking again of the metaphor, so it seems like your constitution will change as my diet hasn't really changed that well. I think they do menopause in massive upsweat side. So it means my constitution was sort of change. I'm going to change it.
Yeah, no, actually. So the question is about constitution. Did my constitution change because I've gone into menopause? Your constitution doesn't change. It's your gift in this life. It's what you get to work with all the way through. Now, we may not know it at all from the very beginning, and many babies these days are born quite imbalanced already. But there's your constitution. We call it the prakriti. And by the way, the word prakriti is a Sanskrit word for our constitution. It's also the Sanskrit word for nature out there. Yeah, and there's no accident about this. And there's something called your vikriti, which is your state of imbalance at any point in time. And so if this is my constitution, I want to be in this arena here. This is where I'm going to feel good, right? But if I keep doing things that are not agreeing with my system, then I get out here. Now I have symptoms, now I have disease, and so on. There's a bit of a continuum. Yeah. And so sometimes our way of thinking will change dramatically when the dosha comes back into balance. Yeah. So if I go into menopause and I start having hot flashes, you said, and start having extreme hot flashes, well, that just means I've got some disturbance in there, and I probably have some excess pitta going on, some excess fire, and there's a number of different things that would cause that. Just to give an example, what might cause that? Because it might seem like I look like you eat probably pretty well in many ways. But if I salt my food after cooking, if I have garlic and onions on a regular basis, or chilies, those are things that would contribute. If I have a lot of fermented food, that's going to contribute. So things that we think maybe are healthy, but having any of it or having too much of it is going to cause a problem. Yeah. One more. Yeah.
It's actually interesting to kind of tea and cold foods. So, well, there are obviously some effects that they put in the fridge. So, with this suggestion made that we take the name of the care of the babies of better than the times and I get to eat and
good question. No, I'd suggest that you get some dark leafy greens and cook them and eat them instead. Salads are, raw salad is difficult to digest. Yeah, even the lettuce. But salads a lot of the food that we eat and a lot of the food that we think is healthy came about for commercial reasons, not because it's good for us. Salads were one of those things. Yeah. Yes. Pardon me?
that's maybe the next fish.
You know,
He doesn't eat it.
You don't need you don't need it that much. No, you probably don't here, actually. Yeah.
How to don't need a freezer.
You definitely don't need a freezer. Definitely. Save yourself some electricity there, your money. Yeah. Out. Absolutely. Fridge, freezer, and microwave, gone. Keep it simple. Don't need it.
That's I don't mean go see it every day.
Talk about vata, yeah. But there was something I didn't answer a second ago. Yeah? No? Yeah, okay. Oh, back about the salads, yes. Have some cooked greens instead. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. And you know, the thing is that any of you like crunch? Yeah, I like that crunch. That's the excess vata. Yeah. Now, it's nice to have, you want something firm in that, but the crunch and you really like it, that's because of excess vata dosha. Yeah. Yeah, and you need to not do it. So, okay. Yeah. How am I doing time-wise? Yeah?
We got another cocktail. Good.
Okay, because I have to talk about the okay. Okay. Any more questions related to what we've talked about? Yeah? Okay, go ahead.
So things like dal, it's quite difficult to chew.
Really? Okay. Then it's not cooked enough.
I think it was pretty like it's quite soft.
Oh, okay.
Like this like things. The chewing I can.
So the question's about food that's quite soft. How do you chew it? All you need to do is, if it's soft or it's a soup, and that hold it in your mouth for a few moments. Why? Because it needs to mix with your saliva in order to create digestive enzymes and be digested. So that's all. Yeah, you just need to have it be in there a little bit, and then you might even enjoy the taste some more. In the pink.
So salad, then some just.
Amazing how we get attached to these things. You know. Yeah.
I'm not a salad, so I put it down in my bowl. I'm laughing, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But again,
yeah, you know, and here's the funny thing though is that it grows in the hot weather, and so for you it's going to be summer, which is when your Agni is the weakest. So every now and then, pay attention to how you feel afterwards. Cooked, yeah, yeah, yeah. So always, it's pay attention to how you feel and be honest with yourself afterwards. You see, and these senses, our senses get real attached to things when the dosha is imbalanced. You know, when things are well balanced, we don't get attached like that.
fresh fruit.
Fresh fruit is okay, you know, but you know, like for you all shouldn't be eating, you know, mangoes and things like that. Yeah, whatever's growing around, yeah. But in most cases, I would suggest that you cook it just a little bit. So you take those strawberries and maybe, what else do you have right now? Other berries and you put a little bit of ghee into a pan or an oil and a couple of spices maybe, and you cook it for just a minute, yeah, just a little bit. And what that will do is just wakes it up a little bit, and it takes the sourness down. Yeah, because too much sour is going to aggravate pitta. By the way, pitta ladies up here. Yeah.
It's like I've left out this. Say if I'm green.
Well, no. You know, I get rid of the freezer.
Yeah, like you don't feel it.
Yeah. Now, people and we have a lot of things accessible to us, and we have a lot of clients that are in the way north of Canada and Sweden and places like that. And, you know, you're choosing to live in a place like that. So you make the best of it in that. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. But when you have available to you, which you do here, the food that you can eat, you don't need to do that. Yeah.
Exercise starting part of my
Can you speak up? I can't hear you.
the sister doing parts of like what causes the information is like crime to doing others on diet and saying
Oh, yes. So the question is about cortisone and inflammation, and you have that going on. Is there a way you can eat to make that different? Yeah, because you're doing something that's causing it, and most of that is from what you're eating and how you're eating it.
It's a situation. It's a I just a play chart custom is the what.
A situation, you said? Got it. Okay. Oh, good. Thank you. Then that's what I wanted to talk about, and then we'll take some more questions after that. So we've been talking about digesting food, but now we need to talk about digesting life. Now, all of us every human being goes through difficult times. And why is it difficult? Well, maybe that other person did something that was really not nice. Yeah. But it's also about how I'm responding to it. And it's okay that we have a difficult time, right? If we have, if we have a spouse that walks out on us without any kind of warning, or you have a death in the family, there's all kinds of things that happen in life. And and sometimes it's difficult to accept. That's what digestion of life is about. It's about, can I accept what life is giving me? Because if and for all of us, it can take a little time for some things. But it's very important that we come to acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean that we agree necessarily, right? It doesn't mean that my spouse walking out, that I have to think that was a good thing. No, I have to accept that that's what's happened, and life is offering me more now. And it might not feel that way for a little while. But that is what happens. And so, we get married, for example, and we think I'm going to be married the rest of my life. And then it doesn't turn out that way. And so we have disappointment in that, but eventually we need to let go, because life is offering us more. But if I don't let go, or if I don't let go of the anger, then I'm going to be stuck. And that other person's going to be off doing whatever they're doing. And so who's responsible for how I feel? I am. Yeah. So again, I'm not saying it's not appropriate to have grief, to have anger. But it does make us sick if we hang on to it. Right? So again, it's not about what life gives us or doesn't give us. It's just a matter of how am I responding to it. And so we need time to process things. But for example, if we have a death and 10 years down the road, I'm still hanging on to my grief, well, that's all about me. That's not about the death. And so those are the kinds of things that having a balanced Agni allows us to be able to move through that, and to move through that without damaging ourselves in the process. Yeah. So we're not, one of the biggest things that we do, that most of us do in life, is to try to avoid pain, right? It seems like we don't like it. But there is going to be pain in life. Yeah, if you look at your life so far, there's been pain, but how much suffering is there? And the suffering is different than the pain. The suffering is what we do to ourselves. So, and this has a great deal to do with your Agni. Our ability to digest life is, can I accept that I have a feeling? Can I accept that I'm angry? Because if I can accept it, I can begin to let that go. I can see, what is my part in what's happening right now to me. I don't have to be a victim. Yeah. And then once I can do that, acceptance, then forgiveness can come. And that forgiveness is all about me. It's all about me having freedom. Yeah. So that digestion of life then is just as important as digestion of food. Because if you're not digesting life, you're not going to digest food very well. That makes sense? Yeah, you don't need to, yeah, if you're angry, much better to spend a little time doing some breathing, maybe some journaling, things of that nature to get that out and then go eat or then go prepare your meal, right? Because that preparation of the meal, your energy's going into it. Yeah, so you, and so that, yeah, if you get somebody else to prepare the meal, right? Because you're going to eat that meal, and although the food is okay, it's going to feel not good. Have you ever had that happen? It doesn't happen often in a restaurant. Yeah, because think about it. Think about if the chef had a fight with his wife that day or something. Yeah, and everything is, or he's mad because, or she, or mad about, the other employees not doing their job. Yeah, disturbance in the kitchen is very important. So digestion of life. Give yourself an opportunity, but do recognize that there is life beyond it. Yeah, and the thing is that the more I allow myself that space, and then start to recognize that I need to accept that this is what is happening, this is my starting point, that's when the doors open. That's when the path starts to become more clear. But if I don't accept my starting point and keep thinking I should be over there, then you're going to be stuck. Make sense? Yeah. So every time you're upset, if something I used to do, I used to really complain about the insurance industry, because I personally don't happen to think that I think it's the scourge of society, and that I understand all the reasons we do it, and I have participated in it, but it was something that I would let just ruminate inside of me. Well, that wasn't very helpful. Yeah, I mean, it might sound silly, but do any of you have anything like that? There's something that somebody does that, why are you still doing that? But all I'm doing is harming myself. And this is something, that if you take a look at the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about that we need to respect. We need to respect others, consider others. And that doesn't mean we have to agree with them. Doesn't mean we have to participate with them. It just means that we need to accept each other. Yeah. And so these are all things that have an effect on your Agni. So think about it. It's cellular. And so every time I get angry, or every time I'm holding on to a resentment, or every time I'm looking at you and saying, good grief, why are you doing that? Yeah? Just even that, my cells constrict. Things are not going to take place well. Yeah. So you can see that in Ayurveda, what we do is we look at the function. How is it functioning? Because that's all that matters. And the way these processes take place, and in modern medicine, we've taken it down to the very nitty-gritty of things, but we've forgotten about the whole system. And so it is much simpler than we think, because if we take care of the system, then in most cases, we're going to take care of everything else that's going on there, because our body has the innate intelligence to do that. Our Agni is there for us. We just have to stop insulting it. Okay, so we talked about cold food and cold drinks. We talked about snacking. Those are things that not very long ago, nobody did. Yeah.
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 Yeah, wait, is that the way?
Speak up.
I just asked about the time you gave us all night. I read the suggestions were that constitution for a BC breaking one of it after the candidate's praise and what out there you know that.
Uh-huh.
So I made that all.
Right. You said graze, right? Yeah. Okay. No, and sometimes you'll even hear people in Ayurveda say people with a lot of vata in the constitution should have lots of small meals. And those are folks that don't understand Agni. It's the only thing I can say. you know, the snacking thing only came about because we can go back to the 1950s or so, and so sugar started becoming much more prominent and available. And then in the 60s, it started with lots of deep fried food and fast food. Yeah, as we went into the 60s and 70s, and what happened is people started experiencing blood sugar fluctuations. Right, so now we're talking about refined sugar and deep fried food. And so the medical industry's solution for that was have lots of meals. But I can tell you that the people in the drug industry and the medical industry and the food industry, at least in the United States, they're all good buddies. And so that's how that came about. Yeah. Now, if you're pregnant, might you need a little something more? You know, might there be a snack in the afternoon? There might. Depends. Some pregnant women do need that, and others don't. If they have a real strong Agni, then they usually will. It also can be affected by the constitution of the baby. Yeah. So, yeah, that would be the exception to that. Little kids, little children, yeah, they don't need to be eating all the time. By the way, little kids shouldn't be getting their food out of the cabinet. Somebody showed me that on social media that you know, oh, isn't it great? You know, the 2-year-old knows how to go into the cabinet and get the food out himself and start eating it. Yeah. So when babies are born, their Agni has been dependent on mom's Agni. And now it needs to operate on its own. That's one of the reasons we have breastfeeding, is because it gives the Agni and the immunity time to develop. And if that time isn't there, then you start giving food too soon, and they don't have teeth, so we know they're not going to chew it. And if you're giving solid food, people are doing that these days, then you're going to have problems. And so you have kids with lots of skin problems and other things. Okay, but let's come back to our Agni, yes.
And we talked about the strings. How do you minimize the impact of what's happening in the planet, the kind of toxins that are out there in the planet? Mm-hmm. How do we kind of keep ourselves a bit in place there?
So the question is about helping ourselves minimize the effects of the toxins and all kinds of unhealthy things that are around on the planet. And you do that by doing it yourself. Yeah? Support your local farmers. I was a farmer for 20 years, so support your local farmers. Support what you want in life. It's the same thing we're talking about with your body and your mind, that we need to get to know ourselves in here and start to see what's going on. That's how we make a difference. If each one of us makes some changes, it's going to shift the energy. We'll have more energy. I'll feel more productive in life. I'll want to do things. I'll want to be nicer to you.
Okay.
And that makes a difference, and it spreads that way. That's why I'm sitting here. Yeah.
And this is quite new.
Letty.
Can you recommend anything like that? The ring didn't know anything mad with it. Totally up.
So,
What's the word? But you're saying that it
where's it well?
And yeah. Well, I can recommend you go to my website. Yeah, and there are.
books of him as well.
Yeah, we can give you some suggestions for sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, let's see. Red hair.
Entry.
What about fermented foods? Fermented foods. Okay, so fermented foods, a lot of people will talk about how they experience that they feel better after they have the fermented foods. Now, I'm not saying, and so the reason that is the case, for example, people drinking apple cider vinegar and things like that. Yeah, well, but the thing is that you have a disturbance that you're trying to fix with that. And what I'm talking about is, let's get rid of the disturbance, because when you keep doing that fermented food on top of it, it's brewing. There's a problem brewing. You're not correcting the full problem. Yeah, you're just doing enough to feel a little better. And that's the same thing with you go to the drugstore and buy something and that. And that, by the way, those things, the stuff in the drugstore is more toxic than most of the prescription things. So can you never have fermented food? No, I have a little bit of, what do you call it? A little bit of miso occasionally when I have Japanese food. Now, is it the end of the world? No. Would I want to do it every day? No. I treat a lot of Japanese people. I've spent a lot of time there, and they're having way too much fermented food. So it's that same effect I was talking about earlier, is that you start to have some, and it's strong. So sour taste, we need about that much in your meal. That much between my fingers there.
Again, and
Yeah. Yeah. And we know, when you really like that sour food, oof, yeah, that's excess pitta. Yeah. And so and what'll happen is you keep wanting more, and then you want more. So now in Japanese culture, I've watched in the past 15 years, a little bit more than that, that the amount that they eat is more and more. And you have it more often in more places. And they have lots of skin problems and a lot of other problems developing from that. You take away that excess sour, skin problems go away. Yeah.
Now, since
Hang on, let me get one here.
just you said the 6 taste.
Mm-hmm.
We
6 tastes, yeah. You want at least 5 of the 6 in breakfast. Yeah, yeah. You want to get 5 of the 6 in there for sure.
you took me the breakfast because I couldn't believe give us so much type of body. Go further, I have to take time not, and then that means somebody else was captured after we then but I want to get but there's all that water down, whatever it was. First get on the slide, and it's sort of to the grass and where you got and where I'm not a fan, I could be pretty. We're good with that, like nothing, it was I both and we tried to and get sleep about iron, really sore and bad, but it's bad, it's really, it's real old.
Okay. Right. So the question's about traveling, and should you keep the routine of where you came from, or should you adjust? And no, you need to adjust. Yeah. So yeah, when I got on the plane, actually on my way to the airport, because it took a long time to get there, I already, at that point, I adjust. And I've been traveling a lot in my life. If I adjust to the schedule of where I'm going right then for sleeping and eating. And if you do that, then you have very little to no jet lag. Now, energetically, you know how we started out today and we grounded ourselves? You want to re-ground yourself when you get there, right? That's why sometimes you can get off the airplane, you feel like, ugh. Yeah, just re-ground yourself, bring in a gold sun, just replenish yourself, and you'll feel fine.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to take some food with you. Yeah. Okay.
And to take the walk.
And we do Joe.
See that not very true.
Oh yeah, we talked about drinking water during your meals. Yeah, it's not a good thing to do. Think about it, because you chew the food, and we create digestive enzymes, and then the food's going to digest. So you should hydrate yourself through the day rather than at your meal. And if your meal is such that you feel like you need to drink something, then your meal is imbalancing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Please.
Having wine dinner. Just only have to ask it, then surely take it. Is the unrestricted.
So the question is about drinking wine with your meal. So I would back up to the root of this, and you might say, why do you want to drink the wine? You might say, well, I like the taste of it. I don't know. Think about the first time you had alcohol, and did you really like the taste? But we like the effect. And so it's a choice. It's a choice. Yeah, you have to know that it aggravates pitta and vata. And it's a matter of how much you want that. If you have in menopause any kind of problems, then you want to take it out for sure. But what I'm talking about, and when you start taking care of yourself and taking care of that Agni, then you're not going to feel like you need to drink a glass of wine. Yeah, it's different. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Herbs, adding herbs to your diet, is that something you would still recommend? ashwagandha and
No, not just not just willy-nilly is what I was going to say. You don't just start putting herbs in there. I don't recommend that. If you have a symptom going on, then you need to find out what's causing that and what can I do to support my body to change. So in Ayurveda, if you look at things from a holistic nature, if I put one herb in, I can look at the qualities of that herb and is it going to bring balance to the situation? Maybe, but maybe not. It might aggravate something else. And so, and some of it depends on how much of it you have. But how we approach it in Ayurveda is that we use formulas of herbs. So we use combinations of herbs because, again, we're looking at the qualities and the elements present because we want those herbs to bring balance to your system, not just act on one part of it. That makes sense? Yeah, and so that's why we use formulas most of the time. Yeah, and so just taking something, I'd suggest that maybe you save your money and have a consultation, with the practitioner, and then work from there. Yeah, I think you'll be happier and you'll probably spend less money in the long run. Yeah. Good. So does this make sense then? How you start to see and look at yourself very differently? So some of the things that I'd suggest is that you take a look at what I do in my life from the time I wake up in the morning. How do you wake up in the morning? Do you pop out of bed or do you drag yourself out? Because when you start to take care of your Agni, you'll see that may get a little bit more fun. In other words, that you will wake up and look forward to the day. Then that you look at the preparation of your meals, this is a critical thing for your well-being and your being able to be active in life. Yeah. Okay. My daily routine, well, I'm an early riser and I go to bed. And if you were here yesterday at all, we talked about that you want to go to bed before 10 o'clock at night. And here's why. Because Pitta dosha, that fire element, comes up around 10 o'clock at night, between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. And that's when maximum healing and transformation takes place. That's healing of the body and the mind. And if you're awake, of course, we get really active, right? I used to I did everything in the middle of the night because that Pitta energy comes up. The problem is it's not getting used for what it's meant to be used for, which is for your healing, body and mind. So I go to bed earlier. So I get up about 4:15, and when I'm at home, I do a fire ceremony for 15 minutes, then chant mantra, and then I practice pranayama and meditation, and then I do some asana, and then I have breakfast, and then I start working. And I take walks after meals, by the way. If you can just take a 5-minute walk after a meal, that'll just give some support to your digestion. It shouldn't be a vigorous hike necessarily, but it could be, half hour even, or 45 minutes. And I work, I make lunch. Sometimes somebody makes lunch for me. And I do those things through the day. And then I have my dinner, and I have my dinner about between 5 and 5:30. I go for a walk. I do some other things that I enjoy. I enjoy my work very much too. And then I do just a little bit of spiritual reading, some contemplation. And I have a couple of Marma type exercises. Marma is where we use movement of energy in that. And then I go to sleep. Yeah. Keep it real simple. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, most people in modern society haven't got the privileges to choose their own daily routine like that because they have to go to work.
Well, wait, but you are choosing a daily routine. You go to work. Yeah, I understand. No, you can do this. Yeah, because, you always have to look at what am I doing, and how could that be different? Yeah, because but if we only think about it, I have to go to work and I have to do this and I have to do that. Yeah, maybe you do. And if you have a family, you have kids are taken care of or something like that too. But we start to see, if you're willing to take a look at it and just kind of to just set that ego aside for a moment and say, okay, what's most important to me in life? And I would answer those questions for yourself first and have at least 3 things and not more than 5. And then you make sure that you spend your time doing those things. Yeah? Yeah. And sometimes talking to somebody else about it and just to see, where you can organize things a little differently. Yeah. Yeah. So you would be amazed, because a lot of times we find out that we're kind of just we're just frittering it away, on things that are not important to us. And it's really a matter of what's important to you. Yeah.
I bet I love a hot tea at night. When you finish
Uh-huh.
your meal, having hot drinks like.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Warm to hot. Yeah. Yeah. But not right after the meal, right? But an hour. Yeah. Absolutely. Whoops. Yeah. Yeah. You could have a warm milk at night. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It'll help you sleep if sleep is difficult. Right. So if you have to do night work, the folks who have irregular schedules of work, boy, I'd suggest to get another job. And yeah, it's tough. I mean, that's a tough one. But if let's say you work night shifts regularly, well, you just put the regularity and the consistency into it, and then you'll make the best of it. But when it's that changing, I don't know. I've watched people, there are consequences for that. Yeah. And the thing is that, I understand why some of that has come about, but I think that's a place where people need to come back to the employer and say, this isn't working. What's going on? Yeah. Yeah. Pardon me? I get it. Yeah. 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 But yeah. Okay. Maybe it's an outside discussion. Okay. So you have a sense of 2 minutes? Oh, okay. You're getting a greater sense of yourself. Your Agni, it's the light of your eyes. Yeah? It's what has us be able to express our life force. And that's what we're meant to do. Think about it. Maybe you ever look at somebody else and something you see somewhere on the computer or whatever, and you see somebody and they're doing something absolutely fabulous and fantastic. First of all, we've all done something like that in our lives. Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that we should become arrogant, but I am suggesting that we all have this life force. We should be optimizing that. We'll enjoy it. We'll have a lot more fun. And then we'll be able to be of service to other people and do things that are enjoyable and supportive for everyone. So you talk about what do we need to do to have things be better on the planet. We just all need to work on our own attitude and what we're doing, because my attitude is highly affected on the condition of my Agni. Yeah. So a lot of these things seem really simple, or they might seem like, oh, I'm not going to do that. That's too different. But I have to tell you, it makes a difference, and it's a choice, and that's it. There are no rules in Ayurveda. There are only choices. We can help you understand what are the consequences possibly, and every situation is unique, but that's what makes life interesting. Yeah. So you have the power in you. Yeah. So take some of these suggestions and work with them and see what happens. Okay. Thank you. Namaste.